Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session focused on the health and life science sector in the Midlands. I'm Darren Clark. I'm Chief Executive of Medilink Midlands, which is the industry support organisation for the sector across the entire Midlands. We've got a great panel of speakers lined up today who's going to highlight some of the great things that are going on in the Midlands and all the wonderful opportunities in this thriving and growing sector. I'd like to introduce each of those one at a time. So if I can invite Alex to join me and introduce himself.
Hi, my name's Alex Toft. I run Minerva Business Angels, which is part of the University of Warwick Science Park. We're one of the most prolific investors in the Midlands, as recently accoladed in the Freeports report. We've been running since 2010 as Minerva. We've done over 100 investments, over 40 million now, which has helped leverage nearly 41 million. We invest in a wide selection of opportunities, including medtech. We've done quite a lot of healthcare investment per se. My own background is I'm a founder of a biotech and raised 72 million. I also spent a period in Public Health Wales as Director of Operations and ran the local air ambulance, including the launch of a national children's air ambulance. A bit of a wide portfolio in that respect.
Great, thank you very much, Alex, and wonderful to have you here with all that great experience. Next, I'd like to invite Hilary.
Hi, good morning. My name is Hilary Funning. I'm the Director of Research, Development and Innovation at University Hospitals Birmingham, which is the largest of the NHS hospitals in England. The Trust is also part locally of a collaboration with the University of Birmingham and Birmingham Women's and Children's Hospital, that is Birmingham Health Partners. This is a very active campus. Very, very good collaborations across campus and beyond our inter-campus and cross-campus relationships, wide collaborations with other research and NHS institutions in this country. Thank you for the invite to join this morning.
Thank you, Hilary, and delighted to have you here as well. Next, I'd like to invite somebody that Medilink has had a close involvement with really since its inception in 2004 and has been a former board member of Medilink in the East Midlands, and that's Glen.
Hello, hi, and great to see everybody. Thank you for inviting me along to the panel today. My name's Glen Crocker. I'm a director of We Are Pioneer Group, which was formed by the recent acquisition of Biocity Group by Trinity Investment Management. The group does three things mainly, has a team of venture developers who create and develop new companies through various accelerator programs across the UK. We have an investment team, and then finally we have now, we've grown to 9 sites across the UK where the companies that we've been involved with are given a home, provided with labs and offices and the best environment we can possibly provide to enable them to grow. I was the founding CEO of Biocity and became the chair in 2019 until the acquisition happened in April of this year. And I continue to lead the investment side of the business. I've invested or co-founded a whole raft of companies, acted as non-executive director. And in the last couple of years, I've also headed up the life sciences practice for the global real estate advisor, JLL. And that's at a time when interest in life science real estate has really rocketed. So we can talk about that a bit later, maybe.
Great, thank you very much, Glen, and great to have you here and great to see how Biocity in particular has grown over the years. Our final panel member is actually an existing non-exec director for Medilink Midlands, and that's Faz.
Hi everyone. Darren also for inviting me on this panel. So I'm Faz Choudhury, and my background is that I founded and I'm the CEO of 2 companies. One is a private one and one is a NASDAQ listed company, so Nemaura Pharma and Nemaura Medical. And I've raised around $75 million over the last few years to fund the developments in both of these companies. My background is in pharmacy, nanotechnology, and nanomedicine. and the companies we have are based here in Loughborough. And yep, I very much look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Faz. So now I'd like to start by asking first question, which is really, we're all Midlands-based individuals and organisations. So I'd like to ask what, in your opinion, makes the Midlands such a great place for investment? And maybe start with Faz.
Oh, yeah, sure, great. So, you know, I guess there are a few things. When we talk about investing, sorry, can you hear me okay? Because I can hear some echoing. Can
you okay, but there is a little bit of echoing. Maybe if we ask the other panel members to switch their microphones off.
Great. Okay. Oh, that's a lot better. Okay. So I guess as with any investment, you know, you would first of all take a look at what infrastructure exists. What is there that's actually supporting any inward investment? That would be my starting point. And when you look at the Midlands, I mean, like for where I'm sat today in Loughborough, you know, within a 15-mile radius, 6 universities. I did originally think there were 5, and I forgot there's actually Loughborough University as well. So, and you've got a huge skill base that comes out of those universities in the form of graduates and postgraduates, etc. But also not to forget that you have a huge plethora of resources in terms of the academic skill sets that exist. Because we very often go and access those resources as well. So you've got the human resource aspect, which is a very important part of it. You've then got the sheer number of clinical trial facilities that exist also in the Midlands. The connectivity, the accessibility, that is also of key importance. And then, of course, you've got the manufacturer supply chain, et cetera, which are all very important. Now, the reason I mention all of that is because it's very easy to come up with ideas. But when it comes to actually then evolving, developing, and sustaining those ideas into fully fledged companies, everything I've just mentioned plays a very important and a very significant role in terms of enabling those companies to flourish. So, for example, if I take Nemaura, when I started, there was there was half a person plus myself. Now, I say half a person, it was one student only turned up half the time, right? So half a person. And basically we went from there to where we are today. And you know, you have a private company, and we have a company that's listed on one of the world's top exchanges, the NASDAQ. And none of that would have been possible to the resources that we've had locally. Okay, and that's in terms of you know, access to, as I say, academic resources, access to advisors, and of course the bulk of the access that we've had to the various organizations has been through Medilink. So the very fact that you have organizations like that that are set up there to provide a support structure to facilitate the growth and development of companies is what's really important. And so from an inward investment perspective, for any investor, the way I would view it is that your investment is relatively safe, because you're not experimenting with, well, you know, here's a new incubator, let's give it a go, let's see how things might evolve, and you know, and we'll take it from there. You have a well-established background infrastructure there upon which you are leveraging. So if I take like the last 9 months, in fact, during this pandemic, we went out and we raised $42 million. That's a huge sum of money for a company our size. But again, you've got to ask yourself, what is it that gave investors the confidence to plow their money into this? And the support structure, the infrastructure that exists in the locality, beyond doubt, played a significant part. Our ability to be able to attract and retain talent played a significant part. So therefore, I think, you know, if you use our progress as a classic example from, you know, from concept through to where we are today, it just demonstrates what is possible when you've got all of that infrastructure around you. And that's why I would say that the Midlands certainly is a very good place to bring in investment, because you can nurture those companies and take them a lot further.
That's great. Thank you very much, Faz. That's a very comprehensive answer there. Covered lots. Is there anything, Glenn, that you think could add to that?
Well, yeah, I think Faz has covered a lot of it. It's the established nature of the base and the skills. It's great people make great companies, and there's an awful lot of people across the Midlands in a whole raft of different areas, whether it's from medical technologies through to discovery and development services businesses where we've got a particular strength, which I'll talk about maybe if I get a chance a bit later. I guess cost isn't something that you want to harp on about too much, because I think the strengths in people are probably outweigh that. But the fact is, the cost base is a lot lower in the Midlands compared to the likes of Cambridge, where, for example, lab rents are pretty much twice as much as they are around in this area, and employment costs are around 20–25% higher as well. And that makes a big difference when you're putting an investment into the company, because it's a lot further. So that would be my main additional point to what Faz had to say.
Thank you, Glenn. A very good point. Hilary, Faz has already mentioned all the universities in a close proximity to him in Loughborough. How about from your perspective and from a trust point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I think both Faz and Glenn have focused very much on, if you like, the substrate, to make this area particularly attractive. I'll add some things which are much more about the human side. None of that works unless you can attract people into this area. So if you invest, then you need to bring more people in with you. So what makes this a really great area for people to live in. And you'll hear my accent. I'm not from this area originally, so I have my own personal experience of this. So a few reflections on that. I think the first is the collection of the university sector, with many of them performing at global level in terms of their output. So that's one factor. The other is the NHS sector. You have some of the highest performing NHS trusts in the country. In this region, those two things together will, so basically there's a job for all the family. So if a husband or wife moves here, it's pretty likely that one spouse will find employment in a sector that's related or linked or different in this area as well. I think that's a really quite important point. The other is great schools. Yeah, there are great schools in this area, so you can bring your kids and you can bring them through primary to secondary into the university sector, and then potentially with job opportunities for them at the end of that. It's a young population. There is a real vibrancy about this region. There is a real go-getting attitude in this region. I think we often don't really shout out about the fantastic way in which people collaborate, work enough about the West Midlands, but that is a real fact about living here. And then there are other things. We've got the CBSO. We've got a huge cultural footprint here. So again, that will tick some folks' boxes, and it's easy access. At the moment, it's an hour and 40 minutes. You're living in the centre of Birmingham, door to door. To London is it's about an hour and 40 minutes. You can access the Peak District, 90 minutes. You can access the Lake District. You can even sail, right? You can even sail in Birmingham because there's sailing on the reservoir. All right. So there is a significant amount of, if you like, collaterals that actually make this place very, very attractive. History, culture, education, and a population that has got a real drive to develop and grow.
Great. So it's about the that wider environment and the community as much as it is about the expertise and speciality within our sector. Alex, it's pretty comprehensive answers there. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that.
No, it's just really to repeat. I mean, I've been on a similar journey to Faz. I started 3, and then we grew it to basically a multinational. We were based in the Northwest, and people said, "You'll never do it." because you know, everybody's based around the M4 corridor and nobody wants to work in the northwest, and that's before we have the access to all this technology now. And it didn't. In the end, we were able to do it cheaper, faster, more effective than some of our major competitors at that time was Genzyme and Amgen. So I think it can be a myth. For example, we talk about the Golden Triangle and all the resources and everything down there as a sanctity of the pharmaceutical development biotech world. We have a strong medtech economy. We have a strong medtech capability. Okay, biotech is something that we need to really grow and develop. And I think that's going to come, especially now. We did see in 2008, 2009, about 6 billion disappear from the drug development sort of area. We have a fantastic CRO capability in this region. I mean, I remember Glen being involved in a CRO that was spun out of BioCity. So there's all the characteristics here. So speed, efficiency, capability, like Hilary refers to, the ability to attract that talent, but does that talent need to move like it used to do, given the what we've got now in terms of media connections? So from an investments perspective, I mean, it's a virgin territory in many respects to some of the regions, and that gives that opportunity because the talent is here, the capability is here, the expertise is here. And now the manufacturing, I mean, we seem to forget manufacturing, which is one of the biggest challenges that you can ever face in a pharmaceutical world, and we have that. So really, there's no reason for it not to happen. We just have to make it happen now.
Great, thank you, Alex. I think we've covered lots there. So what we're really saying is, with all the great things that are already here and going on in the Midlands, we're well set up. But how do we maximise that and for even greater success for the future? So I'll stick with you, Alex, this time and start with you.
Well, how do we maximise it and build it for the future? One of the things, we've got the infrastructure already. There's a big programme about connectivity. People also forget as well that some of the funding that we have access to through the Midlands Engine Investment Fund, and there are other capability funds here around us. So what we need to do is shout more about what we have, what we've got and what we're capable of. The West Midlands has formed a health cluster to try to do that. We've never really sung our own song enough. We need to promote about some of the excellent opportunities that we've got, and some coming out of spin outs out of the university network across the Midlands and West Midlands. And we also need to be able to attract those investors from outside into the region so they can see. There's an argument that they say with respect to investors, particularly institutional investors. Are they irrational or are they lazy? So are they irrational? They don't come here because they don't see the opportunity, or are they lazy because they don't want to leave out of London? So the argument is, if we can show them the opportunities, then we will get the investment. We have a good group of basically individuals who will support some of this early investment and help it grow, and then they can go on and leverage that. So what do we need to do? First of all, shout about more about what we've got, provide the doorways for people to approach these companies and connect with these companies that we've got in the West Midlands. And of course, sing our successes. From our successes, people love successes. And I think that will attract that investment community and that expertise. And again, you know, one of the things we've never really promoted enough, our capabilities. Like Hilary said, with respect to Birmingham, you know, that's a capability that's not shouted about enough, and then that's one of the challenges that I think we need to address.
Great, thank you very much. Faz, do you agree? Is there something else we should be doing to grow our success?
Yeah, I think, you know, you've got to try and make life as easy as possible for new startups. The more support you can provide, whether that's in the form of human resources or in particular financial resources, it is so important, because ultimately what happens is that, you know, people learn through a process of failures and all the rest of it, and eventually, you know, something works and off they go. But very often people can give up because either they're not getting the right funding or they're not getting the right support. So I think on the other side of the coin, you know, there is that aspect of how do we potentially nurture more startups, incubate more ideas, and provide a support structure to be able to do that, with a view that we're looking for much more long-term growth, i.e. the long-term outcome, measured over 10, 15, 20 years, as opposed to immediate impacts.
Great, thank you, Glenn. I'm sure that's in part music to your ears, and you agree with that.
Yeah, I do, and I think sort of building on that, I think we do need to create the environment that makes the most of the strong research base that we've got across the region, and encourages, enables more well-funded spin-outs from the universities that we have here in the region. Just give you an idea of the scale of the opportunity, a few facts and figures. So in the period 2010 to 2014, Oxford University had 13 life science spin-outs, Cambridge had 8, and together Nottingham, Leicester, Birmingham and Warwick had 9. So all roughly equal. And actually, if you look at the research power of those, the combined 4 institutions versus Cambridge, it's roughly the same when it comes to biological sciences. So that sort of makes sense. If you then look at the period 2014 to 2018, Oxford had 28 spin-outs, Cambridge had 25 in life sciences, and Nottingham, Leicester, Birmingham and Warwick together had 9 again. So Cambridge really taking off, the other 4 universities not. And what happened in between that period was that Oxford got the £700 million Oxford Science Innovation Fund, Cambridge launched a £250+ million Cambridge Innovation Capital Fund, and nothing of scale happened in the Midlands. And cause and effect is obviously difficult to prove, but the fact that you have got this huge pot of money that is a draw that encourages the development of spin-outs, I would have thought had a factor to play in that. So yeah, so what that says is there could be maybe 3 times as many spin-outs coming out than we currently have, and that's a huge opportunity.
That sounds very interesting. I'd like to pick up on that point shortly, but before we do that, if we just come to Hilary, from your perspective, Glenn's already mentioned university spin-outs. Do you see activity from trust as well as university? And I know there's been some notable successes, not least the binding site from a Birmingham point of view. Is there anything you've done there from an environment to support that? And what could others, both innovators and investors, learn?
I think the binding sites are a really great example of the definition of use, and then a collective will to actually deliver a product around a very well-defined use, where you have both an NHS organisation and you have a university working hand in hand. And I think that that's really, really important, because, you know, it's great to develop things, but actually you need to actually have a market that will take them, will scale them. And I think there are particular benefits in this area. You know, if I look at University Hospitals Coventry and Warwick, if I look at University Hospitals Birmingham, and some of the other trusts around the region, who are keen to actually take the novel and translate that so that you can scale and adopt. And we have infrastructures like the West Midlands Academic Health Science Network, you know, looking to identify opportunities for innovation, looking to prime fund or to do small investments in those to allow people to develop prototypes and scale. So those are real collaborative opportunities. And I'll just come back to this point about we just don't shout enough about this region. So an example, a couple of examples from COVID that allows you to see how quickly we can kind of turn on a dime in this region. So one of the pieces of work that was done in Birmingham during COVID was support for the Cabinet Office ventilator challenge. So what probably many people want to know is that in Birmingham, we actually assessed all of the prototypes that were coming. So we did usability testing on all of the prototypes, developed technical files for them, and provided that information to inform the Cabinet Office decision making around which of those prototypes would be further developed. We're currently supporting India, who has taken receipt of some of the ventilators that were developed. So we're currently supporting India in how to best use those and how to triage and trim oxygen consumption associated with those ventilators. So that's been a direct kind of benefit. All of that was set up and run and managed almost entirely online. Because at the time there were nobody was allowed to come on site for this hospital unless you were a patient. So, you know, all of that was set up, run, delivered in line with the time requirements from government. Other examples around outputs over the last year. So AI technologies. So this is a really big, you know, there's a lot of investment in AI technologies. There's a lot of development opportunity in AI technologies. But again, like other medical devices, you need a market. So this particular area is globally leading in terms of standards for AI in clinical trials. So the FDA and MHRA standards for AI clinical trials have been defined by Birmingham. That was published toward the end of last year. There have been some other globally leading papers around defining a concept called health data poverty. And that's really important because that goes to the heart of the data on which these deep learning models and so on are actually built, and ensuring that actually they are representative of populations. And then in tandem with that, there are programs within the NHS trusts where they're looking at how they use these technologies to reshape the ways in which we deliver care. And that's a direct link then, if you like. That's a direct kind of crossing of that arc from a research peri-regulation environment and into a translation, adoption and scaling environment. And there are opportunities in this region with the size of the NHS trusts, with the collaborations that currently exist, not just between the academic and the NHS sector, but between those sectors and industry partners, to actually drive real collaborations where we work collectively to do the trimming and tuning, I'll call it, that allow you to drop product into an NHS and other environment, and then scale that and share that information widely.
Great, and some really interesting things there as well. And I think I'll try and come back and pick up a little bit on that, where you've highlighted some examples in COVID. But I think to go back to you, Glen. So I know you've authored a number of reports over. You'll be able to tell me accurately, but I think it's at least the last 10 years. Decades, which from a Midlands point of view, I think highlighting this, what you sort of described there, this research excellence, but the whilst we have some good examples of successes, it still lags behind where that research excellence is. I guess you've indicated potentially some of the reason why. I don't know if there's any other things you think might be the reason for that, and more importantly, what do we do about addressing it? I think everybody's sort of highlighted that we're probably not good enough, or we could do better at shouting about what's going on in the Midlands. But is there anything else from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few more facts and figures if I can. I'm a bit nerdy about those, so forgive me if I just sort of plow on through some of these. But it's personally, I find it useful, and obviously, as we've already said, the research base is really strong, and about 10% of all the UK's biological science research power, which is measured in the Research Excellence Framework, is based in the Midlands. And that's actually about the same as in the East of England region, so roughly comparable. Yet the life science investment into the Midlands in 2020 was 0.5% of the UK total, compared to 29% of the UK total into the East of England. So that's about 10 million versus 480 million pounds. So that can be something you can wring your hands about, or you can talk about it as an opportunity. And the conundrum really is that despite that investment discrepancy, the Midlands has a really thriving life science sector. So it's actually got 28% more companies than in the east of England, although employment is about 20% lower, but a lot more companies are being developed. And one of the reasons I think for that is that the Midlands is particularly strong in companies that don't necessarily require very high levels of investment. And again, it's chicken and egg here. Is there not very much investment because the companies don't need very much investment, or do we have lots of companies that don't need very much investment because there isn't very much investment? But these companies are things like medical technology businesses, drug discovery and development services companies, and so on. And we've got companies like Signature Discovery, huge success story that is in the discovery and development services area. And what that means is that a proportion of that investment that's going into companies in the east of England and elsewhere around Oxford area actually ends up being spent with the discovery services companies in the Midlands. And these are high quality, knowledge-based businesses that we should be really proud of and do everything we can to foster and encourage them and really build on that sector within the region. And on top of that, as an investor, it's actually good news because discovery services companies make great investments. Most of our best exits have been in this sector. And we've had an average exit multiple of about 14 times our original investment. Plus, the investment competition is much less compared to the companies based in the likes of Cambridge and Oxford. So there is a good opportunity here if you're an investor. We've already talked about the cost of doing business being lower, so your money goes further. But all of that said, good opportunity to invest, money still flowing into the region in the form of the services that the discovery and development services companies are providing. But imagine what could be achieved with even just a relatively small increase in the amount invested into companies in the region. And that's why we're about to raise our next fund, in part to try and address that and to take advantage of the opportunity. But more money means more growth, but lack of money isn't currently holding it back as much as you might imagine.
So yeah, I think if we take the positive from that, based on the amount of investment in comparison, we've done really well with all the successes. So just imagine what we could do with that much more funding. So I think I'd look at it as a very positive message from that point of view. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? What else could we do? Happy to open it up.
One thing that I've always been keen to do is, in many respects, copy what they've got down south, which they call Med Angels, which is specialist investors who look at the biotech industry, stroke medtech industry, and try a way of bringing them together. And I'm hoping that under the new Midlands Health cluster that's being formed, that's one of the objectives we can do, so we can help support and fund some of those early startups through that mechanism. In terms of actually spin out, in terms of our activity in the healthcare sector, we are seeing a lot. We work with the 8 Russell universities called Micra, and we saw lots of new opportunities being developed, particularly in screening of medicines. We've got new technology in terms of how we support the delivery of medicines and their effectiveness as well. The company within the Science Park, the University of Warwick Science Park, has just raised 3 million on similar technology. So we have some successes there. And again, it goes back to the common theme, is that the more transparent we can make those successes, the more we can collate people around them and invest them. It is hard when you start off early. It is a long lead time, and there is a specific investor set that look at that. But again, we just need to find a way to collate those opportunities, to give them with the tools that we have available, because I always believe that money brings money. few successes, brings the corporate investors, brings the multinationals into the marketplace, gives them a reason to establish here. So a little bit more way to go, and as Glenn pointed out eloquently, we haven't enjoyed the amount of investment from other areas, but we still got a good tool bag to work with, but a lot of the more needs to be done.
Great, thank you.
To add to that, so there is another kind of activity going on across the region, which I think is really important currently, which is the increasing the infrastructures that are coming into place to make data more readily accessible for research purposes. So for example, on the Birmingham campus, you have the HDR UK Healthcare Data Research Hubs, so Insight and Pioneer. Pioneer is acute admissions data, healthcare data. Insight is ophthalmology data. If you look across the region and you look at Coventry and Warwick, then one of the largest research collaborations, which comprises industry as well as NHS and academic, around digital pathology. So again, getting data ready and getting that into a place where it can be exposed and shared for research purposes. And those things are now really, really important because they are the substrate of so many developments, whether that's early discovery, whether that's allowing us to do trials and run trials in a very different way, whether that is supporting moving toward, developing the ability to deliver on real world evidence, for both pharma and for tech. So that is something I think that we don't perhaps shout enough about as a Midlands region, but there is a collective movement going on at the moment to surface that capability for development opportunity.
Great, thank you. And Faz, I did see, I think you came in about the same time as Alex with your microphone. So was there something you wanted to add to that?
Completely forgotten now.
Sorry.
What Glenn said earlier, I think I just make one point, and that is what you can't underestimate here is the importance of what I mentioned right at the outset, the importance of the infrastructure. Look, you could be sat in Singapore, in India, in North Africa, virtually, and you have access to information, to resources that everybody else has access to. Okay, so that has broken down. That barrier has broken down. Therefore, you have access to information based on which you can innovate, you can create, you can invent, etc., etc. So you've got to ask yourself, therefore, what makes a place special? What makes it attractive? Ultimately, therefore, well, if anybody can come up with an idea anywhere in the world, what is going to allow that idea to be nurtured, to be incubated, to be taken to its end, i.e. commercialized successfully, is the rest of the infrastructure that exists. And this therefore goes back to what I originally said. And this is why, from an investor's perspective, if I was sat there, that is what I would be looking at. Okay, and so that is why we are such an attractive proposition in the Midlands, not just because I've lived here most of my life. And that aspect about resourcefulness, the fact that we're able to stretch money so much further, again, from an entrepreneur's perspective, that is absolutely fundamentally important. Okay, that's where I would finish on. Sorry.
Okay, fine. And I see Malcolm's put into the chat, I think, an interesting comment there about maybe how we should view this and look at actually the countryside and where we are in our environment is the glue that holds us together. And I guess with changing working practices as well, that's a really interesting one to look at, and how we promote ourselves and how we promote the Midlands. I know we're rapidly running out of time. We've got about 6 minutes of this session left. I wanted to come back to something that Hilary had picked up around the region's response to the pandemic. But whilst we're also doing that, just to finish off and give every one of our panel something to think about, I'd like you to come up with what would be the one exciting new opportunity that you would highlight to the audience today, for potential investors. So hopefully I will just get each of you, after we've sort of picked up on the pandemic side of things, Hilary mentioned a great example with the ventilators where the region really came to the fore. How do we maximise that from the Midlands point of view, both nationally and globally? Hilary, do you want to, with your comment, do you want to start with that?
I guess that also goes to, you just asked a question about what new opportunities that there are there. So, so I think what that example shows you is that we have the capacity and capability to support companies to, if you like, change direction in terms of what they manufacture. Okay, so a lot of those companies didn't ever manufacture ventilators when they started out. But actually, kind of in terms of resilience, I mean, in terms of resilience, if we ever have a heaven forbid, another pandemic like we have just had, but being able to support companies who wouldn't necessarily see, for example, the healthcare sector as being able to support them to change their manufacture and their product lines very, very quickly and walk them through what they need to do in terms of technical evidence preparation and filing. So supporting not just how they might reshape manufacture, but how they would actually undertake the regulatory requirements to get those products regulated. So I think that is the example, and there is facility here. There is facility here to do that, and there is opportunity for companies to do that.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Hilary. Very succinct, and you answered my two questions in one, which is great. Maybe Alex, come to you.
Yeah, well, in terms of, say, opportunities, I think one is too short, there are too many. We've seen new technology for screening new molecular products. We've seen new technology for delivering drugs more effectively by opening up the availability of cells, models for delivering drugs more effectively through the GI tract. We've seen medtech. So it would be wrong for just to specify one. But what I can say that we've seen a dramatic increase. And we've got some really exciting technology. We came up with, well, not us personally, but the one at Warwick University came up with one for a new COVID test, which is far more efficient than the lateral flow test that we currently see at the moment. And that's been an important side effect of COVID. It's back on the agenda, the importance of the health sector and supporting innovation. So that's been one of the most dramatic things. And why should we invest? Because it's an exciting new front that we're moving forward to, and the necessity to keep investing and growing this sector as is back on the agenda, and it's been realised the importance of it. Fell off the agenda probably towards the early 2000s. Remember British Biotech, for those who are old enough for us, and we had the earlier, should we say, we had the pharmatech bubble before .com bubble, but again, it's back on the agenda, and we're seeing money flowing back into the sector. And I think everybody now realise how important it is, and the pandemic has been a great leveler and a reset of the necessity to grow this opportunity.
Great, thank you very much, Alex. So the time is now, I think, is your message there. So Faz, from your point of view, anything?
Well, I mean, in terms of future developments, what I would say is that what we shouldn't lose sight of is that whatever we embark upon does not have to have immediate results, because ultimately COVID is here to stay. Okay, and although we've had vaccines, we've had delivery mechanisms, etc., or diagnostics developed for today for immediate deployment, don't forget that we still need it for next year, the year after, for 5 years' time, and therefore it is still worthwhile embarking on programs that can fulfill that over time. That's what I would say at this point in time.
Right. Thank you, Faz. In interest of time, Glen, I'll give you the last word, but unfortunately it does have to be a very brief one. So is there any sort of last thought you want to add?
Yeah, so in terms of, this is the wrap-up comment.
It is, yeah.
Okay, well, in that case, I will definitely get in the fact that the most exciting thing that's occupying my mind at the moment is the new fund that we're developing, which is initially just a 15 to 20 million pound fund, but we're growing that to 50 million plus to invest in the opportunities that we're developing through our accelerators and through the different sites. And it will give us great access to really good deal flow. We've been doing it for 20 years now, and looking forward to building that, launching that in the last quarter of the year. And if anybody wants to speak to me about it, then just get in touch.
Great, thank you very much, Glenn. And thank you to all of our panel. That's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour through healthcare in the Midlands, but hopefully it's given everybody a good feel for all the great stuff that's going on. I really appreciate all of the panel's input. Thank you very much.
Thank you.